They said it so casually that I almost missed it. We were sitting around my sister's dining table, the kind with scratches from years of family dinners, the kind I helped carry into that house decades ago. Plates were still warm. Someone laughed, and then my nephew said it like it was nothing. He leaned back in his chair and said, "You know, you're lucky they still tolerate you." The room went quiet for just a second, not long enough for anyone to feel uncomfortable, long enough for the words to land. I remember smiling. I remember nodding. I remember thinking, that's it. That's the moment. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even feel angry right away. It was more like something inside me finally sat down after standing for years. I had spent so much of my life explaining myself. Why I did things the way I did. Why I didn't do more. Why I needed time. Why I needed space. Why I couldn't always be what they wanted. And in that moment, I realized they weren't listening anymore. Maybe they never were. I'm in my 70s now. When you reach this age, you start to notice how people talk about you when they think you're not paying attention. They use words like stubborn or difficult or set in your ways. They forget the years before. The years when you were strong, when you were useful, when you were the one everyone depended on. I remember when my hands built things, when my back carried loads that made younger men shake their heads. I remember being needed. That's something people don't talk about enough. How painful it is when you go from being needed to being tolerated. After my wife passed, things shifted. Not all at once. Slowly. Like furniture being moved out of a room piece by piece. At first, the family checked in. Calls every few days. Dinners together. Offers to help. I said thank you more times than I can count. I didn't want to be a burden. That word sat heavy on my chest. Burden. So I learned to keep quiet. If something hurt, I swallowed it. If I felt lonely, I told myself others had it worse. If I needed help, I tried again tomorrow. There were small moments, comments that stung but were brushed off with laughter. "You're still driving? Oh, wow." Or, "You should really think about downsizing." Or, "Do you even remember how to use that phone?" Ha! Everyone laughed. I laughed too, because that's what you do when you don't want to be difficult. You laugh, you nod, you shrink a little. I told myself it was normal, that families tease, that they meant well. But somewhere along the way, the teasing started to feel like permission. Permission to talk over me. Permission to decide things for me. Permission to discuss my life as if I wasn't sitting right there. I heard them once in the kitchen, whispering about selling my house someday. Someday soon, they said. I stood in the hallway and listened. My own walls felt unfamiliar. Still, I explained myself. I explained that I liked my routine, that I liked my mornings quiet, that I didn't want to move yet, that I was managing fine. I explained gently, carefully, like every word had to be wrapped in cotton so it wouldn't offend. I thought if I explained enough, they'd understand. That was my mistake. That night at my sister's house, after the tolerate comment, no one corrected him. No one said that wasn't fair. No one even looked at me. They just moved on to dessert. Pie was served. Coffee poured. Life continued. And I sat there, smiling, feeling something inside me loosen. Not break. Loosen. On the drive home, I didn't turn on the radio. I let the silence fill the car. I thought about all the conversations I'd rehearsed in my head over the years. All the explanations I'd prepared. All the times I planned to say, "This hurts me," or "Please don't talk to me like that." I realized something then. I had been working harder to be understood than they had been working to listen. The next morning, I woke up early like I always do. Sunlight came through the same window it had for 30 years. I made coffee. Black. No sugar. I sat at the table and watched steam rise from a mug. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel rushed to prove anything. I didn't feel the urge to call someone and smooth things over. I didn't draft an explanation in my head. I just sat there, quiet. Later that week, my daughter called. She sounded distracted. She told me I should think about being more flexible, about meeting them halfway. I listened. I didn't interrupt. When she paused, waiting for me to defend myself, I didn't. I said, Okay, that was it. She filled the silence with more words. Suggestions, advice, concerns. I let them pass. That's when I noticed something strange. The less I explained, the more uncomfortable they became. They were used to my reasons, my apologies, my careful tone. Without it, there was nothing to push against, nothing to correct, just silence. At the grocery store, I ran into an old friend. He asked how the family was. I hesitated, then said, "They're fine." He nodded. We talked about the weather, about his bad knee, about nothing important. But as we parted, he squeezed my arm and said, "Take care of yourself." Not in a rushed way, not like an obligation. It stayed with me longer than any family dinner had. I didn't announce my decision. I didn't send a message. I simply stopped explaining. When plans were made without me, I didn't ask why. When advice was offered I didn't need, I didn't justify my choices. When comments were made about my age, I let them hang in the air. Silence can be louder than arguments. Inside, I was still the same person. Still thoughtful. Still caring. Still willing to listen. But I stopped shrinking. I stopped bending myself into something easier to tolerate. I didn't become cold. I didn't become bitter. I became still. One evening, I sat alone in my living room, the same room my children once ran through, laughing, chasing each other in circles. I could almost hear it if I closed my eyes. There was sadness there, yes, a soft ache, but there was also something else. Relief. They thought tolerating me was a kindness. They never realized how much of myself I had been giving away just to make it easier for them. And as I sat there, watching the light fade outside my window, I understood something clearly for first time in years. Silence wasn't weakness. It was my choice. And I was only just beginning to understand what that choice would cost and what it might finally give back. The silence didn't fix anything right away. That's something people don't tell you. When you stop explaining yourself, the world doesn't suddenly understand you. It just notices the space where your words used to be. At first, my family filled that space with their own noise. More calls, more advice, more concern wrapped in familiar tones. I listened. I said very little. They mistook my quiet for agreement. That's how it usually goes. When someone stops pushing back, others assume they finally accepted the truth. I let them think that, not out of spite, out of tiredness. A few weeks passed, then a few more. Invitations became shorter, calls less frequent. When we did speak, there was an edge to the conversation, like they were waiting for me to slip back into my old role, the one who reassured them, the one who explained, the one who made things easy. I didn't. One afternoon, my son stopped by unannounced. He stood in the doorway, hands in his pockets, eyes scanning the room like he was checking for changes. Nothing had moved. The furniture was the same. The photos still lined the walls. He asked if I was okay. I said yes. Just yes. He waited. I didn't add anything. He shifted his weight and laughed softly, the kind of laugh people use when they're uncomfortable. He said I seemed different, quieter. I nodded. That was all. He stayed 10 minutes, maybe less. When he left, he didn't hug me like he used to. He patted my shoulder instead. The door clicked shut behind him, and the house returned to its steady hum. I sat down and noticed my hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I started paying attention to small things. How peaceful my mornings felt without rehearsing conversations in my head. How my breathing slowed when I wasn't bracing myself to be misunderstood. I spent more time outside, walking the same block I'd walked for years, but seeing it differently. Neighbors waved. Some stopped to talk. They didn't need explanations. They just listened, or they didn't. Either way, they let me be. One day, my daughter called and asked why I hadn't responded to a message she sent weeks earlier. I told her I didn't have anything to say at the time. There was a pause on the line, a long one. Then she said she was worried. I told her she didn't need to be. My voice was calm, steady. I could almost hear her trying to find the right argument. It never came. After that, the conversations changed. Not better. Different. Shorter. polite, like we were learning each other again from a distance. I thought about my wife often during that time, how she used to listen without interrupting, how she knew when to speak and when to stay quiet. She understood that dignity didn't need defending. It just needed space. I wondered what she would think of me now. I hoped she'd recognize the man she married, the one who knew his worth without announcing it. There were moments when loneliness crept in. Evenings felt longer. The house felt larger. I won't pretend it didn't hurt. It did. Quiet decisions often do. But there was a difference between loneliness and humiliation. I had lived with one for years. I was learning to live with the other. Then something unexpected happened. My nephew called, the same one who made the tolerate comment. His voice was hesitant. He asked if we could talk. I agreed. We met for coffee. He kept his eyes on his cup as he spoke. He said he hadn't meant to hurt me, that he'd been joking, that everyone joked like that. I listened. When he finished, he looked up, waiting. I didn't lecture him. I didn't explain how it felt. I didn't describe the years that led to that moment. I simply said I understood. And I meant it. Understanding doesn't require forgiveness to be loud. He asked if we were okay. I told him we were fine. He seemed confused by that answer. Maybe he expected anger. Maybe tears. He got neither. When we parted, he looked back once, like he wanted to say more. He didn't. After that, the family dynamic shifted again. Subtly, conversations included more pauses. Decisions weren't announced as quickly. I noticed people asking instead of telling. Not always, but sometimes. And sometimes is how change begins. One evening, my daughter showed up at my door. She didn't call first. She stood there longer than my son had. She said she missed how things used to be. I asked her what she meant. She said when we talked more. When I explained things. I told her I still cared. That hadn't changed. But I wasn't going to keep defending my existence. Her eyes filled. She said she didn't realize how tired I'd been. That admission mattered more than any apology could have. We sat together quietly. No fixing. No solving. Just sitting. That night, after she left, I felt something shift inside me again. Not relief this time. Something steadier. Like a line had been drawn, not between us, but within me. I don't know where this will lead. Families have long memories. So do old habits. Silence doesn't guarantee understanding. It only guarantees honesty. And as I sit here now, listening to the house settle around me, I know one thing for certain. I didn't stop explaining to punish them. I stopped because I finally chose myself. And I can feel something else coming. A moment, a decision, one that will test whether they truly see me now, or whether I was always meant to walk this next part alone.